New year, new me. We all know somebody that says that and they never stick to it. Well, a lot of these NBA teams do the same exact thing, and today I want to redirect them. I want to help them out going into the future and give every NBA team a New Year's resolution. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And hey, what would your New Year's resolution be for your favorite NBA team? Now, just a few things I want to throw out there before we get into today's video. For one, if you're going out for New Year's tonight, do it responsibly and drive safe if you are deciding to take that route. But for today's video, we're going through every NBA team, and we're going to do it quickly, so stick along for the ride. For the Thunder, their New Year's resolution is to find the blueprint to beat the San Antonio Spurs. They're 0-3 against them and 27-2 against everybody else. They have the talent. We know that. They have the star player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but can you figure it out in maybe a 7-game series against that young and fun Spurs team? That's their question. Now, for the Spurs, don't force anything. As of right now, you're 23-8. You're second in the Western Conference, and you have a top 10 offense, defense, and you're top 10 in point differential. And a lot of this is with Wemby coming off of the bench for a surprising year out of Luke Kornet. But for the San Antonio Spurs, you're in the mix for Giannis. You're in the mix for some of these big stars around the league. Don't do it. Don't force anything. The mojo is great. The chemistry is great. Just stick it, stick along for the ride. Hopefully you're healthy. And I think you have all it takes to go out there and make a run at the finals. Now for the Nuggets, the main thing is Nikola Jokic's health. He is going to be out for the next month. Hopefully when he comes back, there's no ramp up period. But for them, outside of Jokic, it's getting Aaron Gordon back. Another guy that could be the 5-man in this rotation. And before he got hurt, he was averaging great numbers. 19 points, 6 rebounds, shooting 50-40, almost 90 from the field. And of course, he had that big 50-point game very early on in the season. For the Nuggets, it's about getting healthy. And it starts with Jokic, but another great piece is, of course, Aaron Gordon. For the Lakers, it is the defensive effort of this unit as a whole, starting with the King, LeBron James. LeBron needs to take that assertive effort to be that extra, piece on that defensive end where he can really command that side of the court because they don't really have a great interior big as it is. So the defensive effort of this team is what it's going to be the difference in them being a good playoff team and a great playoff team. For the Houston Rockets, you need to add guard depth. I know Fred VanVleet is ambitious and he wants to return this season. For the Rockets, it's not necessarily about adding a starter, but adding depth. If you can get a Ty Jerome, if you can get D'Angelo Russell, a guy that is just solid enough for the time being that you may or may not get Fred VanVleet back, that's going to be huge. And for the Rockets, I think that is all that you need to do. Don't go out there and swing for the fences, but grab a solid rotational guard that can be a temporary piece. Same can be said about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Mike Conley's getting up there in age. Rob Dillingham is not the player you wanted him to be yet. And the same can be said about the rest of this guard room. Right now, it's Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels running the show. And everybody else just kind of doing their part. You need another guard. Again, there's a lot of names out there, whether if you want to trade for one, whether if you want to pick up a guy like on Malik Beasley. But overall, I think you need a point guard, a guy that can run the show, get Naz Reid, get Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels in their spots, and just make their job easier so they don't have to do so much on a nightly basis. Because if they can get a guy that can do just enough, we've seen with Mike Conley in recent years, they can make deep run into playoffs as they've went to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. As of right now on paper, you look pretty good, dang near a top 10 offense, defense, and point differential team. You just need that steady guard to run the show. Maybe it's Chris Paul. Phoenix needs new doctors. Really, they need to figure out this Jalen Green situation because when he played, he looked very comfortable in this Phoenix Suns system as he's only played 2 games so far, and he averaged about 15.5 points, shooting decent from the field, 48% from the field, 43% from 3, which is very good for Jalen Green. Now, he did shoot 60% from the free throw line, but that was only on 5 attempts. For Jalen Green, though, if he comes back into this Suns rotation with Dillon Brooks playing career basketball, with Devin Booker being himself, and this big rotation being surprisingly good, they could be a sneaky first-round team. I'll leave it at that. But overall, New Year's resolution, let's get Jalen Green back on the court. Now, if you're the Warriors, you want to get this player off your court because Jonathan Kuminga, for his entire career, seemingly has been in trade rumors. As he's this year, they paid him right. They promised him a bigger role in this offense, and he's not really capitalizing on this. Granted, Steve Kerr is still very inconsistent with his rotations, and Kuminga, when he's given the chance, isn't really showing much improvement. He's averaging about 12 points a game, 43% from the field, 32% from three. Overall, it's time for a change. For Memphis, I think you have to trade Ja Morant. I know last night he had a 40-point game, but without him this year, you are 3 to 4 games better. You're 9-7 with him. They lost last night, so you're 6-11 with him in the rotation. He's only averaging 18 points a game, but he's shooting a horrendous 37% from the floor and 22% from three. I get it. Ja Morant was once looked at to be the franchise face, right? The guy that runs Memphis and hopefully gets them back into the contention picture. And he did that early in his career, but now with his attitude issues, the I guess obvious, tell that he doesn't want to be there anymore. I think it's time to make a move. Trade him, get a bunch of assets in return, and jumpstart this rebuild. For Portland, big time wins. We, of course, know you got the first win against the Thunder this season, knocking them off of their undefeated season at the time. But since then, you've gotten a couple big time wins along the road. I just want you to continue that. Continue this momentum the rest of the season until you get Damian Lillard back into the lineup. But overall, you've been very solid under a sudden head coaching change there with Thiago Splitter taking over day one of the season. But let's just continue to get a lot of these young players confidence, getting some big-time wins, whether at home or on the road. The Utah Jazz know what it takes to score a bunch of points and to be in a lot of games that they're not supposed to be in on paper. For example, they just played Boston. Keontae George almost had 30 in the first half. And that's why this team has a top 6 offense this season. They can run it up, but they can't guard a nosebleed. Right now, they have the worst defense in the NBA by a decent margin. They're bottom 5 in point differential, so when they lose, they really get blown out. And honestly, as the 11th seed in the West, there's still a chance for them to turn this around and make the play-in push that they want to make, but it won't happen if they remain a bottom 5 defense. So whether if you trade for a piece or whether Will Hardy just tells this unit, get in the right mindset, right? Guard your man on the defensive end of the court and just do enough to get this offense, a chance to really just outscore everybody on a nightly basis, kind of like how the Pacers have done in recent years. So for the Jazz, find some defense. In Dallas, it's simple. You have a lot of injuries to veterans like Kyrie Irving, like Anthony Davis, but you have a rising star on your team, and I'm going to say ride the flag. This is a guy in Cooper Flag that is all of a sudden averaging about 19.5 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, facilitating better than what 4 assists per game would tell you on paper, and he's shooting a lot better from the field. Right now, he's got his percentages up to 48% from the field and 28% from 3. I really wish I would have looked at just the last couple of weeks for his numbers, but overall, he is playing great basketball. He looks like he can be that leader of a franchise kind of a player. He's setting records left and right for as young of a player as he is. Ultimately, though, surround him, do whatever you can. And honestly, I don't think that means trading Anthony Davis. I kind of like that defensive duo. For the Clippers, you are in danger of missing the playoffs, which would be a first for James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. But ultimately, ride it out. Right now, you're picking up a bit of steam. You're 10-21 on the season. You do have a bottom 3 offense in the NBA. But ultimately, the defense is there, man. You just need to be healthy, and these veterans know what it takes to win. They know what it takes on a nightly basis to continue their momentum. But can they? That's the question. Right now, there seems to be a lot of turmoil in this organization, from star players to coaches to the relationship between the both. So I think you just ride it out, man. Whether if this is a complete tank job and they try and get a top pick, which they don't have their own pick, or if they want to fire sale this at the deadline, or maybe with all the veteranship they have and the star players, maybe they can get it together, get a bunch of wins in the second half of this season, and make a play-in push. But don't do anything stupid. Don't dig a bigger hole for yourself. Just ride this season out. Now, there is no riding it out for this team. Just blow it up. I know the front office, you still think at 8-24, you can be a contender in the West this season. But with guys like Russell Westbrook, DeMar DeRozan, well past 35 years old, you have Zach LaVine and Sabonis at 29 years old. Just trade these guys. Jumpstart this rebuild around Keon Ellis, around Keegan Murray, and just keep some of your young, nice players like Nick Clifford. But just trade these veterans, man. Get as much draft capital as you can or young assets and jumpstart a rebuild, man. And finally, in the West, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. Just let the young stars thrive, whether if it's Jeremiah Fierce, who's averaging 14 points a game, or Derek Queen, who's averaging 13 and 7. Zion has come back, and he has looked good in his few starts since his return. Just let these young guys thrive, man, because you might trade Trey Murphy, you might trade Herb Jones. You're going to need some other young guys on this roster to really be that steady pieces around Zion for the future, because obviously you have no ambitions of trading Zion anytime soon. So, for the Pelicans, let these guys get the ball and do whatever they can and grow on their own as much as possible. Now let's move to the East with the Detroit Pistons. This was my prediction before the season, and hopefully it still stands true because it can happen pretty easily on paper. If you can trade for Lauri Markkanen, who's averaging 28 points a game, shooting 90% from the free throw line, and is just a sniper from the outside, it not only fills the void of a lack of perimeter threats on this team, but it also takes you from a good team in the playoffs to a great team. And I think you honestly might be the favorites, if not 1A, 1B there with the New York Knicks. For the Knicks, just trust Mike Brown, because what he's doing right now, his magic is working. You have a top 3 offense, top 10 defense, and your top 4 in point differential. You're 22-9. You're the top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. Look, you're playing great basketball. The rotations are better than expected. Players are settling into those more so than playing 40 minutes a night like in recent years. But ultimately, what you're doing right now is great. I think you're still the favorite to come out of the East. For the Celtics, this is a pipe dream. But if you can get Tatum back while you're 19-12, overperforming as far as preseason expectations, you have a top 2 defense, you're a top 3 seed in the East. If you can get Tatum back at any point this season, look out. They might come out and actually win the Eastern Conference yet again if Tatum can find his groove, let's say in late March, early April, going into the playoffs. For the Raptors, don't make a move, but test the markets. Whether if it's with a Giannis, an Anthony Davis, I think getting a guy like this for a package around RJ Barrett and some draft capital, you can elevate the ceiling. Putting a Anthony Davis, for example, next to Brandon Ingram, next to Scotty Barnes, it elevates that defense to an even scarier heights. You're on the level of OKC at that point if Anthony Davis can stay healthy, because you're already a top 5 defense. Darko in this offense, they've had a lot of injuries, and they're trying to figure out this rotation and find a consistency there. But that is a reason why you're a bottom 10 offense. But ultimately, with this defense being as great as it is, making a move for a star, it's only going to elevate the offense. And for the Raptors, that would take you from an okay playoff team to a pretty good playoff team in my eyes this postseason. Now, a team a lot of people had hype for before the year was the Orlando Magic. And whether if it's Franz going down or Paolo going down, they can't stay healthy at the same time. I think they have one full game in health with Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz, and Paolo this season. And even in that game, Franz went down. So for the Magic, you have a guy like Franz that's averaging 23 and 6 a game, shooting 50% from the floor. They look their best when it's Franz and no Paolo compared to the vice versa. Regardless, if you can get all of your big 4 together and healthy before the playoff run, maybe you even add a big at the deadline, you can be that sneaky team in the playoffs because the defense will keep you in games. But can you find what you're best at offensively with the big 4 together to really push you over the top? That's the biggest question. For the Sixers, it's adding another big into this rotation. You have Joel Embiid. I understand that. And you have some decent bigs behind him. But this is a guy in Embiid that's only played 13 games this season, 19 the year before, 39 the year before that. He did play 66 in 2022, and well, I think that was the year he won MVP. If not, it was the year before that. Regardless, he's not going to be healthy in the biggest moments. That's just something you have to prepare for. So getting another solid big at the deadline, maybe it's a Jared Allen if the Cavs continue to plummet. So just be on the lookout, test the market, and please add another legitimate big at the deadline behind Embiid. So if he goes down, it's not just a complete tank. Just like the Raptors, if you are the Miami Heat, you have a pretty good team this year. You have a top 6 offense, you're top 9 in point differential, and you are in the mix in the Eastern Conference to avoid the play-in. I think testing the market for an Anthony Davis, testing the market for more notably a Giannis Antetokounmpo, is going to be huge. So for the Heat, just like the Raptors, you have a good roster, but you can really elevate it by adding a star. So just test the market without overpaying. Talking about Jarrett Allen, I think it's time we move him. He's averaging 13 points a game, 7 rebounds, and shooting 60% from the floor. But for a team that before the year was looked at to be 1A, 1B with the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference, it's anything but that. And as a Cavaliers fan, I'm just sick of watching Jarrett Allen on the court because he's not bringing that defensive mentality. He's not a tone setter at that position. And when we need him in the biggest moments, he always shrinks. Mitchell Robinson makes Jarrett Allen look like a poverty center. And that just shouldn't happen for the former All-Star and Jarrett Allen every single time they play. But that happens with a lot of bigs around the league, whether if he is, even with as far as his matchup size or whether if he's way bigger than his opponents, he just doesn't play like big at all, right? So for Jarrett Allen, I think it's time to move him. He doesn't have a big contract, and if we can bring in a guy like Trey Murphy or Herb Jones in return, that would do wonders for this team and their playoff lives this season. For the Chicago Bulls, commit to the rebuild, man. You do have a top 10 offense, but this defense is terrible. Vucci Main is on the last year of his contract. Let's trade him and get something for him if there's a market for him. But ultimately, you have young pieces like Giddey. You do have Ayo Dosunmu. You do have Kobe White, who I do think is underrated. But Pat Williams was a bust. Okoro is not great, though he has some okay nights here and there. I think you just need to commit. Of course, Montas Buzelis has been very good as well. But let's commit to that core of Buzelis, Giddey, and Kobe White and trade everybody else. If not, let's move a lot of these veterans and just commit to a rebuild, because if not, you're going to be committed to staying in the play-in, which I'm sure Bulls fans, it's not what you want. We'll make this one quick. For the Atlanta Hawks, they're making moves as far as being in the mix for an Anthony Davis. They want to get him on their roster and elevate their ceiling, but just like the Heat, just like the Raptors, test the market, don't overpay. The obvious one for Milwaukee is to figure out this Giannis situation. Is he here? Is he there? Is he 1 foot in, 1 foot out? Let's figure it out, because he is a top 3 player in the world, and if we can commit a good roster around Giannis, of course, we're always going to have a chance to go win it all. And for me this year, it looks like Giannis is staying put. So if that's the case, if you're Milwaukee, you need to climb not only into the play-in, but to avoid the play-in, I think, if you want to have a chance at making a run at things. So you need consistent depth in order to make that big of a run and that big of a change as far as where they are in the standings. You do have guys like Kevin Porter Jr. averaging 19. Ryan Rollins has shot out of a cannon this year, averaging 17. Kuzma 13.5. You see the rest. If this is a team that is going to have a Superman-like effort from Giannis on a nightly basis in order to make a 2018 Cavaliers run, they need this depth to be consistent on a nightly basis, and you need 1 or 2 of these guys to really outperform their expectations in order for this team next to Giannis to make some things shake. Now, this one I might be in the minority in, but for the Hornets, I do think it's probably time to trade LaMelo Ball. You see his games played on the screen here, where it's been under 50 the last 4 seasons, and this year he's been dealing with injuries already. So yes, this is a team that when he's on the court, they operate at a much higher pace and a much higher level. They're one of the best offenses in the league when he's healthy. But if you can trade a LaMelo Ball based on name value and bring in other young pieces and build around your Brandon Millers of the world, I think it's ultimately going to be better for the future. You bite the bullet in the near, but for the future, it might be better for a lot of these, for this organization just going forward. It all depends on the asking price. It all depends on what you can get in return for LaMelo. But honestly, I would test the market with LaMelo and see if you can move him for a big haul this offseason. For the Brooklyn Nets, you are obviously heading towards the number 1 pick. You have the worst offense in the NBA. You do have a surprisingly top 10 defense, but I think honestly, that's just teams getting up big early and taking their foots off the gas, which is why that number is inflated. But this team is just not good. Michael Porter has had a great year, but ultimately you have so much questions about everybody in this rotation that I think in the second half of this year, in 2026, you take all 5 of your first-round picks, that some of them are in the G League still, you bring all of them up to the main roster, you give all of them significant playing time the second half of the year, and see what you have, man. Solidify your building blocks for years to come. Because if not, you have 4 first-round, you have what? The majority of your first-round picks from this past draft still in the G League, and then you're heading into another lottery where you're going to be bringing in a couple first-round picks. That's just way too many young pieces. So let's see what you have in your 5 now so you can trade some in the offseason or do whatever. But let's at least solidify some building blocks that we have on this organization for years to come. And finally, we have the bottom 2 in the Eastern Conference. The Wizards, for one, look, keep giving Keyshawn George the keys to have great games and solidify him as a building block going forward. Continue to let Alex Sarr do what he does and continue to progress and get more confident going forward. But ultimately, you are shooting for the number 1 overall pick. And honestly, if you can get a top 3 pick with this being a top-heavy draft, that's going to be huge for this team. And hopefully, one of these top 3 picks can hit for the Wizards and get them back into the play-in mix next year, because they have so much young talent, and a lot of young talent I like, but they need that head honcho. Hopefully, they can get that in the lottery this season. Now, this team shouldn't be here, but the Pacers, after making a run to the finals last year, had a boatload of injuries, some big names like Miles Turner leave town, and you are struggling because of it. You only have 6 wins on the season. You're the worst team in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA in totality. You are shooting for the number 1 pick to get in, one of these top 3 names that are coming out of this year, like a Darren Peterson, to pair next to a Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam when Hallie's ready to go next season. So for the Pacers, let's continue this tank job and get one of these top names. But that is it. Episode 345. And before you get out of here, I got a couple things I want to talk about, as this has been another very successful season and year on the channel, as we are approaching 18,000 subscribers. And though this year we didn't have the opportunities like we did last year with companies like Bleacher Report and others, this has still been one of the most enjoyable years. We are testing a lot of things this year. We have improved the quality this year about 100% compared to years prior. But I want to thank you guys for all the consistent success I've had on this channel as far as the engagement. Whether this is your first video or your 100th video this year, we don't stop. This is now 3 years running of this channel, and I can't thank you guys all enough, no matter how much you have watched or supported this channel. That is behind us. I do want to say, as far as next year, let's reach 20,000 subscribers, man. That's the goal. Hopefully, we can get there, if not a much higher. If you're going out tonight with friends, family, or whatever the case may be safe, and of course, be responsible in your decision making. But that's putting a bow on the 2025 year. Let's go have an even better 2026.